So we're in the 8th chapter of the Mishnah of Sotah. We're in the laws of war. And interestingly, the Mishnah begins with a speech. Well, okay, first of all, it begins with a speech of encouragement to the troops that you don't have to be afraid. God is fighting for you. But then it goes to a list of people who do not have to serve. So it's really interesting. The first practical topic which the Mishnah deals with, and of course, this is the topic which the Torah deals with, is the list of people who don't need to serve in the army. And we're still in Sefer Devarim, and we're going to continue reading through the Pesukim. But actually, the Mishnah is going to quote the Pesukim, so I haven't brought them separately on the source sheet. But the Mishnah is going to quote each verse, each pasuk, and it's going to explain it. And it begins, "V'dibru hashotrim el ha'am lemor." So the officers address the people. So the previous speech, the speech of encouragement, was given by the Meshuach Milchama, the Kohen, the priest who was anointed to lead the people into battle. And now we're talking about the shotrim, the kind of the officers, the soldiers. The officers address the people. Who has built a new house but not dedicated it? He should go back to his home, lest someone else dedicate it. In case he should die in the war and someone else should dedicate it. That's what the verse says. And the Mishnah then now explains, we're going to be exhaustive here. We're going to be inclusive. It doesn't make any difference. Maybe you built a house for holding straw in. I mean, it's still a kind of house you might live in. You might eventually sleep out in this house or turn it into a house. It's considered a house for this purpose. It doesn't matter whether it's someone who builds a straw house, beit bakar, someone who builds a house for cattle, beit ha'etzim, someone who builds a house for wood, beit ha'otzarot, a storehouse, wherever, all of these kind of houses. Echad haboneh echad lokeach. It doesn't matter what this kind of house is, you're considered to have built a house. And by the way, we're similarly expansive in the sense that you don't actually have to build it. I mean, this will speak to our 20th century way of doing things. You actually don't have to build the house. So it's exactly the same whether you build it or whether you buy it. Whether you inherit it. Or maybe someone gave it to you as a present. If it's a new house, you go home. And who has planted a vineyard but has never, I've translated harvested it here, but the Hebrew word is chilalo, which is really literally to profane it. Now, remember that the first 3 years are sacred. The fruit is orla. We can't touch it. In the 4th year, we take it to Jerusalem. We eat it like Maaser Sheni. So it's only in the 5th year that we effectively put the fruit to profane use. So that's why the Mishnah is here. Is talking about hasn't profaned it. It means hasn't harvested it for profane purposes. So you plant a vineyard, actually, you get 5 years off the army. Really, really interesting. And really, really, really emphasizes the discussion in the first Mishnah about the fact that we don't have to break all boundaries to win this war. God's fighting with us in this war. We can afford not to have certain people with us. We're going to see, interestingly enough, by the way, that Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, are nowhere on this list. Nowhere on this list. But certainly people who plant vineyards are absolutely on this list. Mi ha'ish Asher natan keren v'lo chilalo, someone who planted a vineyard but hasn't taken it past its fourth year. Yelech v'yashov leveito, let him go and let it go back to his house. Echad hanotea kerem, now the Mishnah comes in. It's the same whether he planted a vineyard. Ve'echad hanotea chamisha ilanei ma'achal. Maybe he planted 5 fruit trees. In other words, remember we learned already in the Mishnah of Zeraim that once you planted 5 fruit trees, we learned this in the Mishnah of Shavuot, that once you've planted 5 trees, you're considered effectively to have planted a field of trees. That's an orchard. An orchard is 5 plus. So you plant 5 trees, you're considered to have planted a kerem, a vineyard, as long as they're fruit-bearing trees. And even if they're different species, it works. It works. And we're going to be expansive again. The same is true whether he planted. Hamavrich, this is someone who bends. People would take the end of a tree, they'd bend it into the ground, and then it would shoot up again and create a new tree. So that's the mavrich. So the same with them. It doesn't matter whether he's planted it, whether he's mavrich it, whether he's bent it. Ve'echad hamarkiv, maybe you graft it. Interesting that already in the Mishnah we're talking about grafting. So you might graft one type of grape onto another type of vine rootstock. Very common in France today. Ve'echad lokeach, same if you buy it. Ve'echad yoresh, same if you inherit it. Ve'echad shenitan lo matana, or if someone gives it to you as a present. We're going to interpret this expansively. None of these people need to serve in the army. And who has betrothed a woman and not yet, well, taken her literally, but obviously this refers to marrying her. In the time of the Mishnah, you'd have, maybe a whole year between betrothal and marriage. And similarly, the Mishnah is going to carry on. Yelech v'yashuv leveito, he shall go back to his house. So we're going to be expansive. Echad hamares et habetula, the same if you betroth the virgin. Ve'echad hamares et almana, same if you betroth the widow. Filu shomeret yavam, even someone who's a shomeret yavam, even your brother-in-law's, your deceased brother's wife, even your sister-in-law, after the death of your brother. Even someone heard that his brother had died. Even someone who heard his brother died in war. He actually returns home and goes back. Well, the Mishnah says go back to him. I think it should probably be go back to her. So he's effectively considered married to this woman now. He goes back to her. Kol elu shomim divrei kohen me'erchei milchama v'chozrein. All of these hear the priest's words. Interestingly, we're talking about the priest now, not the shotrim. They hear the priest's words and they go home. Umasapkin my mumazon. So they supply water and food. So they're still on war duty. They're still on war duty, but they're basically supplying their quartermasters, their suppliers. They supply water and food. Umataknin et hadrachem, and they repair the roads. So they are basically making sure that the infrastructure works for war, but they don't have to fight. Now, in contrast, there are some who absolutely don't return home. Ve'elu she'einan chozrim. So what are the ones who don't return? Habonei bait shar. Maybe someone who builds a gatehouse. This is clearly something you're never going to sleep in. Achsadra. And achsadra is a kind of a portico. So it's a colonnade around your house. Umarpeset. And marapeset is a balcony. Basically, you straighten up one of the roofs of the house so you can go out and sit on it. Someone who plants 4 fruit trees, so we don't quite make it to an orchard. Or 5 trees which are not fruit bearing. If they're not fruit bearing, somehow they don't make the grade. Someone who took back his divorced wife. So there's a special halacha in Sefer Devarim that someone who marries haloker isha, I think it's the expression is chadasha, someone who takes a new wife is free from the army for a whole year. That's explicit in Sefer Devarim. So we're going to apply this just to someone who takes a new wife rather than taking back his wife who he has divorced. I suppose it means as well, if you divorced your wife and take her back, you don't immediately get a year out of serving in the army. Someone who takes back his own divorced wife. Kohen Gadol, a divorcee who marries a Kohen Gadol. Well, this is an illegal marriage. Grusha v'chalutza Kohen Ejot, or an ordinary priest marrying a divorcee or a chalutza. And then we're going to have a list of other sort of forbidden relationships or forbidden marriages. Mamzeret, Netina Yisrael, a mamzeret or a netina. This is someone who's not Jewish to a Jew. But Yisrael, a mamzeret and natin, a Jewish girl to a mamzer or a natin. Lo haya chozer. They don't go home. So these marriages, they don't go home. All the other marriages do. And then along the same lines, Rav Yudah Omer, af. Rabbi Yudah says, if you build a house on its foundations, in other words, you've bought this house, you've knocked it down, you've just kept the foundations, and then you rebuilt it on the foundations. Very common in, well, certain suburbs of Washington, D.C., I think, right now. Also a little bit in London. You haven't Rabbi Yudah is saying, look, it's not quite a new house. It's more like an extended refurbish or rebuild. At this point, you don't go home. Lo haya chozer. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, and Rabbi Eliezer is going to come in now. Af habonevait levenim b'Sharon lo haya chozer. Someone who builds a brick house in the Sharon doesn't return home. There was something about the Sharon that made these houses very unstable, either because it was liable to earthquakes or because the quality of the bricks was very poor. But brick houses in the Sharon actually had to be rebuilt once every few years anyway. So I think the commentaries say once every 7 years. These are a brick house in Sharon is a temporary house, really. It's not a permanent house. And someone who builds a temporary house, according to Rabbi Eliezer, does not have the right to return home. So in summary, the Mishnah is expansive in its definition of people who do not have to serve. It's as if the Mishnah is saying, look, we have faith. We have faith we're going to win this war. We don't need to make everybody serve. But interestingly, the Torah scholars do not make it anywhere to this list of people who don't have to serve in the army.